Comrades and friends, brothers and sisters, so 4 months ago we brought you Ken Loach for a Q&A session. We filled the place, and didn't you love it?
Hi, Daniel Blake.
And tonight we've got the latest film star who's made no money whatsoever. Apparently the only film star who hasn't made any money whatsoever.
Yeah.
But what a hero he's been to our class for the last 50 years. Please welcome Dennis. So we'll do a question and answer, what Dennis would prefer if we could. Loads of you watch the film, if you want to ask some questions on that first. But you know Dennis, you can ask him anything and he will certainly give you a very, very strong answer. Okay, who's the first one who wants to ask Dennis Skinner a question? Yes, comrade.
Dennis, I saw on your on the film before that you were talking about stem cell technology.
Yeah.
And the way that you beat down Enoch Powell.
Yes, he'd only got third reading to get through, and that would have been a different ball game, yeah?
That's right. The main question is, obviously, the technology and the knowledge that we gained from that stem cell technology is helping so many people now that comrades in this room, as we all know, with cancer and various other diseases, it's helped so much. And yet the Tories were not wanting to have that in place.
No, this was way back in the late 80s, very late 80s, and a woman by the name of Jo Richardson, who was also on the Labour Party NEC, and some of you might remember her, and she said to me that Enoch Powell had got this bill and he'd nearly got it through, and he only needed to get the third reading, and he was going to do it in a fortnight on a Friday, Private Members' Day. And she said, what can you do to stop him, Dennis? I said, well, I'll try. So when I used to work in the pit, I used to study the Mines and Quarries Act, and people used to think, what do you do that for? And I did it to outwit the bloody manager. Because he was supposed to know everything about the Mines and Quarries Act. And when I was one of the union men at Park House Pit, I knew a bit more about it. And so, and plus the fact there were no social media then, and no these telephones and no pads. And I could think on my feet, and I used to say, well, I think we need 18 men on this coalface. And he said, no, I think we only need 17. I said, well, the cubic feet of 7 yards of coal, I said, a 4'6" high and 4 foot cut underneath. I said, da-di-da-di-da. I said, you know that, don't you? And of course he hadn't got a bloody clue. But I used to come out with it. And so when I went to Parliament, I thought, well, I wonder what the Bible is in there. And it was called Erskine May. And I studied it, and it said a member may move a writ on any day, really. And I thought, that's me, a member. Well, normally a writ is moved by the chief whip of the party to whom the seat belongs to, before the death or whatever of the MP. But it said in Erskine May, a member. And I thought, I'll do that. And you see, moving a writ in Parliament takes precedent over everything else. So I thought, if I move it on the Friday, when Powell is going to do his business with the business of the stem cell research, to put an end to it. And at that time, you know, there were newspapers, the tabloids in particular, were showing Dolly the sheep. Can you remember it?
Yeah.
And what they were trying to convey then, the lousy tabloids, is what they do today as well, is that they were trying to convey into people's minds, don't pay any attention to stem cell research, because they've got a thing then, like they have now against global warming and all that, they've got a thing against medical research, in the National Health Service in particular. And I studied it and I thought, well, if I moved the writ and talk all day, because it finishes at 2:30 on a Friday. You know, they don't do a full shift on a Friday. So I thought, if I move the writ and talk all day and allow everybody to come in and say, will my honourable friend give way? And I will every time. And that's what we did. And I talked about every village in Brecon and Radnor. That's where the vacancy for an MP was, and that's the writ I moved, Brecon and Radnor. So I had to study all the villages in Brecon and Radnor, so I knew what I was talking about. And of course it went all day, and finally Enoch Powell was sat on the 5th row at the back, which was his normal seat, and he wandered down and he never uttered a word to me in his life, and neither I to him, because he was totally different colour to me. And he said to me as he passed me at 2:30 that afternoon, when all the shit had hit the fan, and he was as dead as anybody could be. He said, I reckon without you, Skinner. And I just talked the day out. And so now when I look at the BBC, and I saw other week that a man had had some stem cells taken out of his knee and they'd stuck it in his brain and got rid of a tumour. You know, I think what a wonderful my best day. I mean, I've done a lot of things in Parliament that are memorable, but believe me, that was, without a doubt, the best day's work.
One of the things that Ken Loach was impressed with, and I've spoken to him a couple of times since then, was the questions and the contributions from the audience in November. So I'd like to get some. But just before I do, I just want to say a big thank you to Ian Stewart, who went to Dennis's house and brought him here today. Yes, he's late, but then again, Ian was always late. Just nice one. So what this is all about, the Tories are cutting everything in the Salford TUC Centre against unemployment, campaigns, defence, the unemployed, those sanctioned, those disabled. And these events are to raise money so we can continue to do it. That's what it's all about. There's councillors here, there's officials. I'm interested, and so is Dennis, your views and any good questions that you can do for them. Anybody got a question? Yes, comrade.
Yeah,
Just how will your name first, please?
my name's Jack Gould. So the Labour Green Paper on housing came out yesterday. Had a lot of pledges, had a lot of promises. I wonder what your general views are on that, and more specifically, when it comes to something like rent caps, it's very good in principle, but how will it work in practice when, if you enforce rent caps, it means that a lot of landlords, for example, will default on the mortgages? How is the Labour manifesto for housing going to work in practice?
Well, if they do it like I did, from the 12 years I was a member of Claycross Council as a young miner in Claycross, for 12 years when I was on that authority, they never raised the rents once. The problem is that the government took over. And that's why my brothers they were made bankrupt for 14 years, because they were on the council, continued after me, and they fought the Rent Act. And every authority in Britain said, we're all going to fight it to the bitter end, because Ted Heath is going to force us to put up rents by £1 a week, way back in 1971. And the Claycross people fought to the bitter end. And they were the only local authority that stuck it out. And you know, when the commissioner came to put the rents up for Ted Heath, he never collected a penny. Not one penny from the residents in Clay Cross. And that's why my brothers, 2 of them you saw in the film, Graham and David, they were made bankrupt for 14 years and kicked off every local authority. But they're still knocking around today, aren't they? And they're film stars. That's the policy that I believe in. Irrespective of anybody else, it's me that's answering the questions, not the Labour Party. But believe me, when I've been rebelling in the House of Commons long before now, the one that was always in the lobby with me was Jeremy Corbyn. Isn't that remarkable? On housing and everything else. So I was one of the first to nominate him. And believe me, I've got more faith in him than Tony Blair, whose one big mistake was to take us into war in Iraq. What a stupid idea. 150 odd of us voted against it. And Tony Blair, instead of being in Iraq, should have been building houses, because the more houses you build, the landlord then will find that the rents will be reduced. And it's the shortage of houses that forces rents up. So the more you build, the cheaper they'll be. Thank you very much.
Just to respond, like, that's all well and good.
Oh, I know you're going to argue forever. I mean, I can tell.
Of course.
Yeah, carry on. I don't give a shit.
Like, you can tell, you can say you can build 100,000 social homes a year. That works very, very well with your base. It's perfect. But in a system and a country where most people's capital is invested in their homes, you've got problems with these pledges. How is it going to work in practice? I'd love to know.
In practice, if you build more houses as sure as night follows day, then the rents are going to be lower as a result. It's common sense. And that's why in those days, what I'm talking about, when I was on Claycross Council, we built every single year until we were building more and more bungalows for the elderly. Believe me, just take it for granted. The more houses that are built, then that means that the landlords haven't got the power if you don't build houses. It's common sense.
Councillor Hines, Billy.
Thanks, Alan. I'd like to ask Dennis what he thinks about the hypocrisy that's taking place at the moment in this country. For example, we see the news at the moment where Assad in Iraq, whether he's a bastard or he's not, I'm not making that point, or Putin, and I don't agree with Putin in that sense. But what would your view, Dennis, when we, in the establishment and the Tory party and some others in this country, look at Russia, look at Assad as bastards, but the bastards in the Yemen, in Saudi Arabia, are murdering thousands and thousands in the Yemen, and not a thing is said about it.
Well, there's one thing I think I ought to tell you. The difficulty in Syria is about the problem that existed in the Middle East for donkey's years. And a lot of people answering questions won't touch it with a barge pole, but I'm going to. It's always Sunnis versus Shias. And Saudi Arabia is a Sunni country. Syria is a Shia country. Iraq was a Shia country, but Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. Iran is a Shia country. Now, are you getting the picture? why they line up in different ways in Middle East battles. He says, well that you know, because we don't come, us people, I'm talking about people like you in the audience and me, we are part of 57 Heinz varieties, aren't we? And Muslims are the same. And we have to get that into our heads. Although some people won't utter the words because they don't want to degrade them and talk about them in different ways. The truth is that we're all mainly white in here. Some of us have got grey hair, very grey hair, and some haven't got it at all. But believe me, the battle in the Middle East and the reason you have the trouble in Syria was because of the so-called Arab Spring. Can you remember it?
Yes.
When they said that the Middle East is going through an Arab Spring. First it was this country, then it was Egypt, then it was Tunisia, and then it was finally Syria. That's what it was. Believe me, at the end of the day, it's Shia versus Sunni. And isn't it funny that both America, Britain, and a lot of the European countries that sell arms, sell them in the main to places like Saudi Arabia and the Sunnis. I'll just leave you to guess. Well, I've not met any. Believe me, when I first went to Parliament, there were about 12 on the left. And then me and Neil Kinnock joined the Tribune group, and there were supposed to be 14, but I didn't work it like that. I think it was 13 and a bit. And so there's always been an ultra-right-wing group at the top of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and there's another one now. It's called Progress.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're financed by Sainsbury's. Do you shop at Sainsbury's?
Yeah.
No.
I'm just telling you, just in case. That's where they get the money from. And they are the people who, by and large, cause, or they try to cause, Jeremy Corbyn a lot of heartache.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we are, on the verge of beating those working class Tories. We're on the verge of getting rid of tedious Theresa and all her ilk. And yet there are some people in the Parliamentary Labour Party, I don't think there's any here, but you can never be sure, that they are more concerned about fighting within the Labour Party than fighting those Tories, working class Tories and all the rest. And it's time they did it. And it's a matter for you to make sure you let them know.
When is it coming to Leicester?
Leicester? I've been doing questions and answers on the film. Well, I've not done any on the film yet, because people are asking questions about any subject under the sun by the film that you've seen. I mean, I've got a pack of notes in my pocket about the film. I'll be going to Leicester when the Labour Party invites me. I have to tell you, it's not happened for a while. But I am doing Norwich next week. I'm doing Erewash. We've raised about between 50 and £100,000 for the Labour Party since the film was started. No big deal, is it? I mean, I'm waiting for a question about the film.
Ask a question about Phil.
Dennis, have you bought a magnolia tree?
No, I haven't bought a magnolia tree because I do pay a lot of attention to what happens in the countryside, and the reason why I walk the parks in London is because when I see the London parks, I think to myself, we should have a park like this in every town and city in Britain. They call them royal parks, and I'm wandering about in the royal parks on a regular basis, but I've never yet been to Buckingham Palace. I just want to put that in so that you understand. I stay on the grass. And so when I saw that magnolia tree, it was a man from Salford that pointed it out. It was Frank Alone. And he used to be a big walker, was Frank, and he represented this area. And he said to me, do you want to go walk? He said, they're on Welsh matters today. I said, come on, let's go, Frank. And off we went. And he showed me this, and he showed me that, and he showed me the beautiful magnolia tree. And it's just at the side of the Jewish area in Hyde Park. And so I had a good look at it. Then I thought, well, I'll make sure that I see it when it's in full bloom. And I do it every year. It's part of my very living and breathing. Because I imagine I'm going to pick mushrooms as well, like I did in Derbyshire.
What magic?
There's 55 sweet chestnut trees in Hyde Park. I just tell you that en passant. And so I am contrary to the idea that miners didn't like the fresh air. Believe me, they did. When we came up the pit after 8 hours in the darkness and we saw that beautiful sun shining, a lot of miners like me would think I'm getting out in that before it's gone. And that's why a lot of miners flew pigeons. That's why a lot of miners had allotments. That's why a lot of miners had dogs. And they went whipping and all sorts. It's because they wanted the fresh air. So don't believe that nonsense that the tabloids talk about from time to time, that miners were spent the time in the pubs. There'll be some, that's true. But believe me, most of them were like me. They got out into the fresh air in order to breathe that fresh air that existed as opposed to down the pit. That's what we did. And so when I came to London as a Member of Parliament and Frank said, do you want to have a walk up to Hyde Park? I said, yes, carry on. And we went as far as Kensington Palace Gardens once. And then it took about 7 miles in all. But I actually think you're inspired more outside than you are in 4 walls. I actually believe, and always have, that if you want to think about what you're going to say tonight or when you get back into Parliament, if you want to improve your imagination, you're more likely to see it amongst the trees and the birds and the bees and all the rest of it, and the magnolia trees and the camellias and the rhododendrons and all the rest of it. That's where you get imagination. As long as you don't bump into Andrew Marr and that guy. Although I did catch him trying to paint once, I said, you're as bloody hopeless as that, as supporting bloody Labour. Anyway, that stopped him painting.
Sue Turner, I've got 2 parts to what I want to say. First of all, I spent this morning with Frank Alone's daughter, Barbara, and she sends her love and best wishes.
Yeah, thanks.
And secondly, you've served under numerous Prime Ministers, numerous Labour leaders.
Tell me.
We're hoping Jeremy can do it, but if not, after Jeremy, who?
Well, I mean...
Dennis for leader.
Well, I mean, I thought somebody would be daft enough to say that. I can tell you now, it wouldn't be me. I don't believe in patronage. I wouldn't hand it out to anybody. I wouldn't take it for myself, and I never have. I don't believe in it. When I got to Parliament, I was elected by the people. When you get to Parliament, your next step on the ladder, what is it? Patronage. And so it don't matter which Prime Minister it is, that's what it is. And then when you become a Privy Councillor, what does all that mean? It means that you can go and kneel in front of the Queen. Give me a break. No, there are some things that horrify me, and one of them is being members of an old party group. And I think, well, you know, you've come to Parliament, you're a socialist, you're representing the Labour Party, and the first thing you do is go on a bloody trip with some Tories. The thought, when it gets into my head, I think, God knows what they're thinking about. So no, I don't join that mob at all. That's why I've got more time to walk around the parks.
Mark here. I'd just like to ask you that the right-wing press, the establishment,
Yes.
is saying that anti-Semitism is rife in the Labour Party. What's your kind of views on that?
Well, I don't hear it, but I know one thing that's happened, which has nothing to do with Labour Party, and that is the social media. That's brand new. It wasn't there when I worked in the pits. And I remember the first casualty of the social media was a man who was a minister under Tony Blair way back in 1999. And somebody had said in his office, 9/11 is a good day to bury bad news. And they hounded the Secretary of State for Transport, the Tories did, until they got him out. He'd not even sent it himself. And then I thought, should I send emails, Dennis? I thought, if that's it, steer clear. And although they masquerade on Facebook as Dennis Skinner this and Dennis Skinner other, and I've got 100,000 followers, I've never sent an email in my life. That's a fact. And I never will. Do you know what happens when members of Parliament send emails? One of the first things the tabloid press do is to check them. And they're never going to check mine. And I'm one of the few people that the Sun had to apologise for, because they said Skinner says this and Skinner said others, but you'll find him on Facebook. And I made the buggers apologise, because I've had nothing to do with it. There's also a man called the Beast of Bolsover, and he does Twitters. And so I thought on the day that the release was made by Lord Ashcroft about Teddy, about the last Prime Minister, Dodgy Dave, and a pig. And I thought, I wonder what the Beast of Bolsovers had to say about this. I thought I'd better check it and see how clever he was. And he said, one little piggy went to market, one little piggy stayed at home, and one little piggy says, oh no, not on the first date. He was clever. He hit the nail on the head.
There's something you just said.
Yeah.
But I put my hand up with one question, but in response to something you said about patronage, you said anybody that goes to the leader's position is sucked into the patronage. Are you trying to tell us, from everything we know about that man, that Corbyn is going to be sucked into the patronage?
No, I don't believe he is. That's why I had that row with Emily Maitlis. Can you remember it?
Yes.
You might have seen it on the telly. Not the telly, on some website
Yeah, on the
or
telly.
whatever. And she said, Jeremy's not giving you a job then. I said, I don't want one. I made it clear to Jeremy from the outset In any case, I was on the NEC at the time, and nobody that was on the NEC could serve on the front bench as well. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, well, I'm giving you some real...
Right.
That's a fact. And so your Member of Parliament, who I've been with earlier today, a few minutes ago, Rebecca Long Bailey, she knows. She knows I couldn't serve on the front bench because I was on the National Executive. I'd been on since 1978. I've earned my corn, haven't I?
Yeah.
So I couldn't be on the other job as well. So I told that Emily Maitlis, I said, you're supposed to be working for the bloody BBC, not Murdoch. I said, get your bloody facts right. You know why I'm not on that front bench. No, I've got nothing but admiration for those people that did do the jobs on the front bench, especially when some members of Progress thought they would lead Jeremy in serious trouble. But some of them did two jobs at once, like David Anderson from the North East, who's now left. And he did Ireland and Scotland at the same time. So I've got nothing but admiration for them.
We're being told that they're shitting on him again about this whole Syria thing, and that there were 18 of you guys that... 18
of what?
The whole Syria and these...
No, I thought you said you guys. I thought you were talking to me.
You guys being...
No, not you guys.
Yeah, there were 18...
I'm nothing to do with that mob.
Okay.
I've just told you. They're financed by Sainsbury's. They're the same people. They're the same people who are collaborating with some of the Tories to overturn a decision next week. Yes, I know exactly what they're up to.
But the 18 people I was talking about was Jeremy, Diane Abbott, who voted against the war before.
Yes.
And who are standing against it now.
Yeah.
And they're being shat on again.
Yeah.
And like, what do we do about this? How can we help?
Well, I shall do my bit because I'll be walking in the lobby with them. I don't need patronage to tell me that. I know what's right and what's wrong. I know that my constituency voted to come out by 70% or slightly more. Do you think I can do the opposite in the face of all that? Do you think I'm going to line up with Anna Soubry and all the rest of them? Not a cat in hell's chance.
Okay, young lad at the back, yes.
Hi Dennis, I'm Joseph. I was just wondering, there are a number of young Labour members I know, myself included, who are standing in the elections in a couple of weeks. And as you've started your illustrious career as a councillor, I was wondering what advice you could offer to people like me who are entering the world of politics for the first time, as it were. How to be the best we can be when entering local government.
Well, the main thing is to be principled. The main thing is to know which side you're on and not waft in the wind. Yeah. And the main thing to remember is that when you get on that local authority, there'll probably be some members of the Tory party on, for all I know. Don't have anything to do with them.
Assistant.
My name's Jackie, I'm from Leicester.
There's a big Leicester crowd in today.
Well, three things. First of all, they've got my mum and dad here, and they're lifelong supporters of you, and I really want to photograph with you after this.
Yes, well, that's easy. I mean, when I was at Labour Party conference now, since the social media began, all I've got to do is to just stand there and they have selfies. I mean, all day long. So that's, yes, that will take place at the end of this thing, yes.
I want to invite you to Leicester because we're trying to set up another workers place like this.
Yeah.
I invite you to Leicester. And the third thing is, I just want your thought, because I feel like I'm living in a really dangerous world at the moment. And I just want to know what you think about Donald Trump.
I mean, when I said it in Parliament, I mean, when I lived through the Second World War, and when they used to bomb Sheffield, because that was the city of steel, and if they had a few bombs left, they used to try and hit the Claycross railway line, because there were two junctions, one to Derby and one to Nottingham, and we used to go in the lobby hole, because my mother had 9 kids, and she said, the reason for that is that your dad had only got to spit at me and I conceived. Did you see her in the film? I mean, I thought it was a very good photo, a picture of my mother. It's one of the most enduring memories for me of the film, because I didn't realise that Dan Draper, the director, had found that copy. But it was all about when my 2 brothers were involved in the Rent Rebellion, and my mother had sort of been invited to make comments. So, yeah, I thought it was wonderful. But my mother, as I say, my mother had 9 kids, and then she finished up with Alzheimer's, and she couldn't remember any of our names. And that's when I did the singing in on the miners' welfare, because I had this funny idea in my head that if people stuttered when they talked and didn't stutter when they sang, it must come from a different part of the brain.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to test my mother. And I sang that song which you heard in the film about that posh man living in that posh place and singing to the photograph of his late departed wife. If those lips could only speak, and those eyes could only see, if those beautiful golden tresses were there in reality, would I only take your hand as you did when you took my name? But it's only a beautiful picture in a beautiful golden frame. And my mother joined in, and I knew at that moment it was like stem cells all over again. I thought, I'm right. And I told my brothers when I got home, I said I've had my mother singing on the miners' welfare. And one of them, who was in the film, said, does they know that bloody trouble, Dennis? He says, there's been them Parliament that bloody long, the brains addled. And so I said, well, I've got news for you. I'm on Desert Island Discs in January or February, and the first song I'm going to dedicate to my mother, and it's going to be that one, If Those Lips Could Only Speak. I says, and I'll bet you now, get me mother around that radio, and she'll join in, and she did. That's why I now go to the early dementia classes in the Bolsover area, and I'm still singing those old songs. You have to sing songs that connected with the youth, so that if your mother and father that are older than you, from Leicester, remember, if they're in that predicament, that's what you do. Sing songs that are applicable to their youthful days, and they'll join in.
I'd like to ask that if you don't think that Jeremy will win the next election.
I didn't say that.
No, I said if he doesn't.
Oh.
Right. What do you think will happen with the NHS? And secondly, do you think that Jeremy Hunt should be locked up for his
Well, personally, I don't think Jeremy Hunt should be there in that job at all, quite frankly. I mean, when you consider that this man is making a ton of money with housing and all the rest of it, I doubt whether he fits the ideal that's supposed to be applicable to every minister of the Crown, that he can make money on the side. And he's the same man, by the way, during the junior hospital doctors' strike. He's the one who came in with that soft grin on his face, and I told him to wipe the bloody smirk off. And the junior hospital doctors who I met on the picket line when I went in for some more trouble with my heart to St Thomas's Hospital, do you know what happened? I spent the whole day in St Thomas's Hospital reliving the memories of being on the picket line with the same junior hospital doctors that I'd done 2 years before. It was wonderful, and I forgot all about my pain. And I got out at 9 o'clock at night.
Next question is from Ian Allenson, who is a sacked and victimised miner. Tremendous comrade, Ian. Worker.
Yeah, that's not a job I've had.
No.
Yeah, in the film you talked about the impact solidarity had on you when you were younger, and obviously a lot of people going into work for the first time now are going into workplaces where there's no union. How do you think we can rebuild that sense of solidarity?
Well, you have to have people like the ones that we were talking about coming with Ian Stewart, and we were talking about blokes like Mick McGeechy. He was a wonderful man during the pit strike and before. You've got to have union people that truly represent workers. Now, I'm not going to go into the pros and cons, but my recollection of trade unionism was that I was one of 700,000 miners at the end of the Second World War, working down 700 pits in Britain. Now, I don't want you to get the impression that I'm saying it was a wonderful job. It was hard work and it was painstaking, but believe me, the solidarity in the pits was worth a guinea a box. You could smell it. And that's why when we went on strike, it was never a surprise to me. Because I knew that the solidarity that existed was so powerful that they would come out. And so, if we said in the pit canteen, we're going to stop the wheels today, you'd have to find a few more words than that, but believe me, we would stop the wheels. Now, I'm not saying that that can be a mirror for every trade unionist in Britain, but believe me, solidarity is important. We don't get it in Parliament because it's a competitive world, but down the pit, just like the docks, and just like many other professions, that's what it was like. I sadly think today, with only 6 million trade unionists as opposed to the 13 million when I was 800 yards below the earth, it's a different figure. And so we have to win this election, because I'll tell you, there have not been many people like Jeremy Corbyn have a chance to have hold of the tools of the trade in Parliament. We need a good, strong, left-wing leader. Irrespective of what the Tory press say, the man is fit for the job. And I'll defend him to the end. I'm pleased that he got elected. And I'm pleased that he got elected twice. And remember, he had the biggest majority of any leader ever since Clem Attlee. And I want Jeremy Corbyn to remember 1945. I want him to work on the same kind of manifesto that they had then when they built the health service. Now we've got to build it again. They're cutting the schools left, right and centre. We've got to give them money when Jeremy Corbyn becomes the leader. We have to do it right across the board. And if it does same as Harold Wilson did, do you know what he did once? He nationalised aerospace with a majority of 1. Have you forgotten already? That's what he did. And so I say that when we get Jeremy Corbyn in, he's just the sort of man that would take the risk again, just like Wilson did 2 or 3 decades ago. That's what we need. People with principle. People that are not going to give in to the right wing. People that are not going to take any notice of Sainsbury and his money. He's the only man that's managed to get rid of the £25 million debt that the Labour Party owed. When I was on the executive way back in 1978, we had a £25 million debt with the Co-op Bank. Tony Blair tried to get rid of it. Jim Callaghan tried to get rid of it. Gordon Brown was an expert in money and he couldn't get rid of it. Ed Miliband couldn't get rid of it. And now Jeremy Corbyn has got rid of the debt. A man that can do that can be a good Prime Minister as well. That's what we should remember.
Okay, Dennis has done a great job. He's took everybody with him. Has anybody got one last question before we move on? You've spoke. Yes, sister.
Hello, Dennis. My name is Mandy. In the film...
I've got a daughter called Mandy. She went to Manchester University.
In the film, you talked about when the miners supported the nurses who were on strike. I didn't really know anything about that.
Yeah, they did, yeah. We had a day because the nurses said they couldn't strike because of the job that they had at the time, and the miners' union right around the country, including Lancashire, yes, they went on strike for a day. And one of the things that the Tory government has done is to stop trade unionists from doing that ever again. Don't forget that. Trade unionists cannot now go on strike like the French people do. I mean, they've got a system that's much better than ours. I mean, they down tools about anything and everything. I'd be all in favour of that. But yes, we did strike on behalf of the nurses.
So, comrades, you've heard Dennis, you've applauded him, and there's been a few times people have said, what can we do? What you've got to do is to make sure that the members of Parliament who aren't supporting Jeremy Corbyn, that you give them a rough time and you deselect them. That's what you've got to do. You've got to make sure that you elect people similar to Jeremy, similar to Rebecca, similar to Angie, that we get them into Parliament. You can't mess around with this. If you don't this time, we will have serious problems. Jeremy Corbyn is a socialist. The media and the Tories are terrified of him. That is why there's so much rubbish going on. You've heard Dennis's analysis. Anybody who can fix the Labour Party financial problems has got to be a magician. This man is a magician. Comrades, put your hands together and thank Dennis for coming.
You're going to hear, I think, from Rebecca. I remember Rebecca when she came to Parliament.
Use the mic, Dennis. Use the mic.
Oh, I'm going to use it. Yeah, I remember when Rebecca came to Parliament, they have to make a maiden speech, you know. And I'm sat in my own room, watching the telly, and I see this young woman get up without notes, and within about 20 seconds, she's saying things that I thought, Christ, what a difference. She's actually took Hazel Blazer's place. I hot-footed it and went to the Commons to see her finish off the speech. I knew at the moment a star was born. She's all yours. And she's not going to be deselected, is she? She's here for a long time. She's wonderful.